Shigeru had always been told about the stories and legends that had been passed down for generations since he was a kid. He had always listened in rapt attention, hanging off every word of the elders and others of his village. One of his absolute favorite legends was about the creature that brought deep-sea fish when it came to the island, and thus helped feed those within the village. In return, the villagers had decided to sacrifice 2 cows to the creature as gifts, and thus began the tradition of gifting 2 cows each time the creature had come ashore. From how these stories went, it seemed that the creature had never attacked the village, always walking around it as if it was smart enough to know that the villagers were the ones to give the cattle to him. Shigeru brought himself out of his thoughts with a sigh, before watching as the waves lapped at the beach as the sun inched closer and closer to the horizon. His muscles ached from doing some heavy lifting and tending to the crops throughout the day, but he was satisfied with the work he had gotten done. It showed that he was finally coming into his own, growing up from a boy to a man, and maybe he could get a job outside of the island where he would make money and buy things to send back to Odo Island. He grinned at the prospect of helping his people in any way he could. And he was so lost in thought about it that he almost missed the dead, weird-looking fish that had begun to gather close to the beach. And when he did, his eyes widened and he jumped, heart pounding as he turned to run into the village, despite the screaming muscles in his legs. "Godzilla!" he shouted. "Godzilla is coming!" He continued to shout, and the villagers were quick to scramble to get everything in motion. Some were gathering baskets to gather the dead fish, and others were going to gather cattle and whatever else they would need to set the work. Shigeru watched, having done his part, and knew that there was nothing left for him to do other than wait. It was when the sun touched the top of the water that the 2 cows were being finished tying up in a clearing, contently grazing and unaware what was to come for them. Torches were scattered about, with their flames already lit. When the sun disappeared, with only its fading rays illuminating everything still, the familiar music that Shigeru heard quite a few times throughout his life began, though usually from the village. Then he felt and heard it, the ground trembling beneath his feet, and the sound of footsteps reaching his ears. The cows lifted their heads nervously, their tails swishing back and forth as they let out their timid moves. Then he saw it. A clawed, scaly foot entered the glow of the torches. A scaly snout followed suit, sniffing at the ground before it lifted its head up and walked forward. The fire revealed more of the beast, though not entirely. Some of it was still shrouded in darkness, but what Shigeru could see was something else. To him, it looked like something out of those dinosaur books, but with a more hunched-over stance, with its tail barely touching the ground. With a snap of its jaws as it leaned down, one cow disappeared, and the other cow panicked, trying to pull the rope free from its knot to try to get away. But it was no use. The creature swallowed the first cow whole, with no problem, before snapping up the second one, silencing it. Before it could rear up again, its visible eye looked over and connected with Shigeru's own. Within that eye held intelligence that was unheard of within reptiles and lizards of today, as well as some form of recognition that he could not decipher. Perhaps it realized that he was someone from the village. He wasn't certain. Their look held for a long moment, before the head disappeared into the darkness, and the second cow followed the first down to the gullet. The creature, Gojira, let out a long, terrifying roar before it turned. knocking all of the torches down and began to leave, heading towards the water before it finally went back out to sea as the music faded. I need to sit down, Shigeru stated, breathless at the encounter before doing just that. Truly magnificent creature. He heard one of the elders speak before he felt a hand on his shoulder. I know that Gojira is frightening. He gave us all a sense of fear, but we'll be fine. Shigeru nodded slowly, knowing the older man was right. If Godzilla was a thing of nightmares, he could have destroyed the village at any time. Yet he didn't for whatever reason. Alright, time to go home, the older man ordered everyone, before he helped Shigeru back to his feet, before starting to guide him back. Shigeru knew that every time he closed his eyes from now on, he would see the great beast looking at him. And with that same look, and he had to wonder if Gojira saw them as his, or were they something that gave out a free meal? He didn't know, and he wasn't sure he'd get a concrete answer. The only concrete thing he knew that Gojira was Odo Island's deity, and will continue to be forever.